Ethan Cole stepped out of the shuttle and looked around in silence. The air on Kareth Prime was cool and clean, filled with a faint shimmer that made everything look slightly unreal. Towers of silver and blue crystal reached into the sky, glowing softly in the sunlight. Around him stood alien guards with tall spears and bright armor, watching him with unreadable eyes. He was the only human among them, the only one sent to represent Earth in this new era of contact. He had been told that this was a moment of history. For the first time, the Alarian Empire had agreed to a diplomatic meeting with humanity. It was not easy to earn such an honor. The Alarians saw themselves as the oldest and most advanced species in the known galaxy. They ruled hundreds of worlds, guided by their emperor and his royal family. Humans were new to them, newcomers who had only recently stepped beyond their own solar system. Ethan adjusted his collar and followed the guide through long corridors made of glass-like walls. He tried not to stare at the strange lights that floated above the floors, or the soft hum of energy that seemed to come from everywhere. At the end of the hall stood a massive door that opened with a deep sound. Beyond it lay the Celestial Hall, the heart of Alarian power. The chamber was vast, larger than any building on Earth. Hundreds of nobles stood in circles on raised platforms, their skin glowing in shades of silver and gold. Their eyes followed Ethan as he walked forward. In the center, on a high seat made of living crystal, sat Emperor Vareth. His robe shimmered like flowing light, and beside him stood his daughter, Princess Leora. Leora was young, barely 19 by human standards, yet her presence filled the room. Her eyes were bright and sharp, her hair like strands of glowing silver. She looked at Ethan not with curiosity, but with the faint smile of someone who believed she already knew everything worth knowing. Ethan bowed politely and began to speak. His words were calm and clear. He spoke about peace, about trade, about friendship between their peoples. He described Earth's growing technology, its hopes for cooperation, its dreams of learning from others and sharing in return. His voice carried across the hall, soft but steady. Then, when he finished, silence fell. Leora stepped forward. Her tone was smooth, but her words were sharp. "So this is humanity," she said, her voice echoing slightly. "The new species that thinks it can join the stars. You speak of peace, but what can you offer? You come from one small world, barely learning to walk among the stars. You are children playing with fire, calling it wisdom." A murmur spread among the nobles. Some smiled, others nodded. Ethan stood still, his face unreadable. Leora looked at him, waiting for his answer. She wanted to see anger or pride or defense. She wanted proof that humans were as simple and emotional as the stories said. But Ethan did not answer. He simply looked at her, calm and silent, his expression neither cold nor kind. For a long moment their eyes met, human and alien, equal and opposite. Then without a word he turned and began to walk away. The guards moved slightly, uncertain if they should stop him. The Emperor raised a hand, signaling them to stay back. Leora's smile faded. The echo of his footsteps filled the vast chamber. No one spoke. No one dared. Ethan reached the great door and paused for a moment. He did not look back. Then he stepped through it and was gone. The hall remained silent for several seconds before soft whispers began to spread. Never in the history of the Empire had someone walked out on the royal court. Never had a diplomat refused to defend his people after an insult. Some nobles thought it was cowardice. Others, for reasons they could not explain, felt something different, a quiet unease. Leora stood frozen, staring at the door where Ethan had disappeared. His silence had cut deeper than any words could. She had insulted him, yet it felt as if she had been the one humbled. For the first time in her life, she could not read the meaning of another's gaze. That night, she sat in her chamber, looking out at the glowing city below. She thought about the human's calm expression, about the way he had simply walked away. No anger, no fear, just quiet certainty. It bothered her more than she wanted to admit. Across the stars, aboard his returning ship, Ethan sat alone in the observation deck. The earth shimmered far away, a small blue light in the endless dark. He closed his eyes, remembering the princess's words. He felt no bitterness, only resolve. Humanity did not need to shout to prove itself. Their strength would speak through their actions, through what they built, through what they endured, through what they would one day become. He opened his eyes again, and the stars reflected in them like 1,000 silent promises. The silence in the celestial hall lasted long after Ethan Cole's footsteps faded away. No one dared to speak until the Emperor finally stood. His voice was calm but heavy with anger. "You have brought shame to our court, Leora," he said. The words made the young princess lower her head, but pride kept her from replying. "You will learn that respect is not weakness," her father continued. "And you will learn that silence can carry more power than words." Then he turned and left the hall, leaving Leora standing alone before the nobles. That night, the city of Kareth Prime shone as bright as ever, but Leora felt something heavy inside her. Her friends and attendants tried to comfort her, saying the human had been foolish to walk away. Yet she could not shake the memory of his eyes. They had not been angry, only calm, too calm. His silence felt like a mirror showing her something she did not wish to see. The next day, the court was busy with news. The humans had left Kareth Prime and canceled all further meetings. Their ships had quietly departed the system, leaving behind only a short message of farewell. The Emperor ordered his advisors to contact them again, but no answer came. For the first time in decades, the Alarians felt uncertain. They had always believed themselves above others. Yet somehow one silent human had made them doubt. Leora walked through the palace gardens where crystal trees shimmered under soft blue light. She thought about Earth, a small world she had barely cared to learn about. Now it was all she could think of. Who was this Ethan Cole? Why had he come so far only to leave without a word? What kind of people walked away from power without fear? Her tutor, an old scholar named Darren, approached her as she sat by the reflecting pool. "You are troubled, my princess," he said. Leora looked up and sighed. "He was only human," she said. "But when he looked at me, I felt as if he was the one judging me. Why does his silence stay in my mind?" Darren smiled faintly. "Because silence," he said, "is a weapon of those who do not need to prove anything. You wounded his pride, but he wounded your certainty. That is far more dangerous." Leora stayed quiet for a long moment. "Do you think he will return?" she asked. "No," Darren said softly. "But humans are not the kind to forget." Weeks passed. News began to spread from distant colonies. Human ships had been sighted in border systems, building stations faster than before. Their technology was advancing rapidly, almost unnaturally fast. Some said they had discovered new ways to use energy. Others whispered that Earth had begun forming alliances with smaller alien worlds the Alarians had ignored. What had once been seen as a primitive race was now becoming a growing power. Inside the palace, the Emperor called for emergency meetings. He studied reports that showed human ships appearing in sectors they had never entered before. "They move with purpose," he said to his council. "They do not boast. They do not threaten. They simply build." The nobles exchanged worried glances. The memory of the silent envoy returned to many minds. Leora listened from her seat beside the throne. She felt a strange mix of guilt and curiosity. It was her words that had started this distance between their peoples. She wanted to fix it, but she did not know how. The Emperor had forbidden her from contacting the humans directly, fearing it might worsen the situation. One evening, unable to sleep, she went to the star balcony that overlooked the capital. From there, the night sky was filled with thousands of glittering stars. Somewhere among them was Earth. She thought about Ethan again. What was he doing now? Was he angry? Did he think of her? Or had he already forgotten everything? Across the galaxy, aboard a human research station orbiting Mars, Ethan sat quietly in a small observation room. His friend and fellow officer Daniel entered and placed a cup of coffee beside him. "Still thinking about them?" Daniel asked. Ethan nodded slowly. "I don't hate them," he said. "They just don't understand us yet." Daniel leaned against the wall. "The whole world saw that broadcast, you know. Some people think you made us look weak." Ethan turned his gaze to the stars. "Maybe," he said. "But we don't have to prove strength with anger. Let them underestimate us. It gives us time to grow." Daniel smiled. "And grow we are. The new gate project is ahead of schedule. Soon we'll be able to travel anywhere in hours. Even the Alarians won't have that kind of reach." Ethan didn't smile, but his eyes showed quiet determination. "We'll build, not to threaten them, but to show who we are. One day they'll understand." Back on Kareth Prime, Leora's dreams were filled with visions of human cities rising under alien skies, ships cutting through the void, and the calm face of a man who had said nothing at all. Each morning she woke with the same thought. What if silence had been humanity's loudest message? By the time a month had passed, even the Emperor could see that something had changed. The humans were no longer waiting for approval. They were acting. They were moving forward. And the royal family, once proud and unshaken, began to wonder if the real mistake had not been in the insult, but in failing to listen to the silence that followed. Months passed after the humans left Kareth Prime, and the galaxy began to notice how quickly Earth was changing. The humans, once seen as newcomers, were now building ships that moved faster than before, powered by something new and efficient. Their colonies expanded across nearby systems, and their engineers worked day and night on technology that no one thought possible for their level. Reports said that human scientists had discovered a way to fold space in short bursts, allowing travel through distances once thought unreachable. The Ilarian nobles started whispering that maybe humanity had not been as weak as they believed. On Kareth Prime, Princess Leora watched these reports with mixed feelings. Her pride made her want to ignore them, but her heart told her to pay attention. The silence of Ethan Cole still lingered in her mind. She remembered his calm eyes and the way he had walked away, and she felt that something important had changed that day. Even her father, Emperor Vareth, had begun to speak of the humans with a new tone, one that was less certain and more cautious. Leora sat in the royal library one evening, surrounded by glowing scrolls and holographic maps of the galaxy. Her tutor Darren entered quietly and bowed. "You still think of the humans," he said softly. Leora nodded. "They are different from what I thought," she said. "When I insulted that man, I wanted to make him feel small. But it was me who felt small in the end." Darren smiled faintly. "Growth often begins with shame, my princess," he said. "The humans have learned much in a short time. They build quietly without boasting. That is what makes them dangerous to those who underestimate them." Leora looked up at the stars projected above her. "Do you think they will forgive us?" she asked. "Forgiveness is not what they seek," Darren said. "They will simply move forward. Whether we follow or fall behind is up to us." Meanwhile, on the human side, Ethan Cole had become a quiet leader among the diplomatic corps. His calm nature and strong sense of purpose made others trust him. He never spoke about the insult he received, but his actions spoke louder than any words. Under his guidance, humans began to focus on unity. Nations on Earth stopped arguing over small things and started working together for the greater goal of survival and progress. It was as if his silence had reached every human heart. At the newly built Nova Gateway Station, a giant ring that glowed blue above Saturn, Ethan stood with a group of scientists and military officers. The gateway would soon open the path to deep space exploration. One of his team members, Commander Lisa Carter, looked at him with admiration. "You know," she said, "some people think that what you did on Kareth Prime changed everything. You made them see us differently." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I didn't do anything," he said. "Sometimes silence does the talking. We didn't need to prove them wrong. We just needed to keep going." When the first human ship went through the Nova Gateway, the entire Earth watched. It was a simple moment, but powerful. Across the galaxy, even the Ilarian Empire watched the broadcast. The Emperor sat with his council in silence as the image of the human ship vanished into the glowing ring. No one spoke. The same feeling spread through the room that had once filled the celestial hall, an uneasy respect. Leora stood beside her father, her hands clasped tightly. "Father," she said quietly, "we should speak to them again." The Emperor looked at her and nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "It is time we learn from those we once looked down upon." He sent a message to Earth through official channels, asking for a new meeting between their peoples. But the humans did not reply immediately. Weeks passed, and still there was no answer. Some Ilarian nobles took it as an insult, but Leora knew better. She remembered how Ethan had walked away without a word. She felt that the humans were not ignoring them. They were making a point. Finally, one evening, a message arrived. It was short and simple. "We are ready to talk again. The place of meeting will be neutral. We look forward to peace." It was signed by Ethan Cole. When the message was read in the court, a sense of relief spread through the room. The Emperor looked at his daughter and said, "You will go in my place. It is time you face what you began." Leora felt her heart tighten, but she nodded. "I will go," she said softly. Soon, a royal ship was prepared for the journey. As it left Kareth Prime, Leora stood by the window and watched her world shrink behind her. She thought about what she would say when she met Ethan again. Would he forgive her? Would he even care? On Earth, the preparations for the meeting were calm but serious. Ethan looked out at the landing site near the New Geneva research station, where the Ilarian ship would soon arrive. He had no anger left in him, only curiosity. He wondered what the young princess had learned in all those months. As the alien ship entered orbit, the sky lit up with silver light. People across the planet watched in silence, just as the Ilarians had once watched the humans. Ethan waited at the base, his hands clasped behind his back, calm and steady. When the ship landed and the ramp opened, Princess Leora stepped out slowly, her silver hair shining in the sunlight. Her eyes met Ethan's across the distance, and for a moment, both remembered the last time they had stood in silence. Now the silence between them felt different. It was no longer cold or distant. It felt like the beginning of something new. The meeting between humans and Ilarians was held on the New Geneva research station, a large complex floating above the blue clouds of Earth. The station had walls of glass and silver showing the sky outside. Human and alien guards stood in lines, watching quietly as Princess Leora walked through the long hall toward the meeting room. Every step she took felt heavy. It had been many months since she had last seen Ethan Cole. This time she had come not as a proud royal, but as a guest seeking peace. When she entered the room, Ethan was already there. He stood near a wide window looking out at the curve of Earth below. The sunlight reflected on his calm face. When he turned to face her, he gave a polite nod but said nothing. The silence made her heart race for a moment. "Mr. Cole," she began softly, her voice unsure, "I have come to speak for my people. We wish to begin again." Ethan looked at her for a long time. "That is good," he said simply. His tone was calm, not warm but not cold either. He sat down at the table and gestured for her to join him. Leora sat opposite him, her silver eyes searching for any sign of emotion, but he remained steady, patient, and silent. For a few moments neither spoke. The sound of the wind outside filled the room. Finally Leora took a deep breath. "I was wrong," she said. "I insulted you and your world because I believed our power made us greater. But I have learned that strength is not in pride. It is in understanding." Ethan's expression softened slightly. "It takes courage to say that," he said. "Humans have made mistakes too, but we try to learn from them." Leora nodded. "When you walked away that day, I thought you were weak," she said quietly. "Now I understand that silence can be stronger than words." Ethan looked at her and smiled faintly for the first time. "Sometimes silence speaks the truth that pride hides," he said. They talked for a long time that day. The air slowly grew lighter as they shared stories of their worlds. Leora listened carefully as Ethan described how humans had come together after centuries of division, uniting for progress. He spoke about the simple dreams of his people, to explore, to build, to survive. In return, Leora told him about her world's long history, its beauty, and also its arrogance. For the first time, she spoke honestly, without the shield of royal pride. As the talks continued over the next days, human and Ilarian teams began to work side by side. Scientists exchanged ideas and engineers compared designs. Both sides started to see the value of each other's strengths. Humans were creative and daring, willing to try new things. Ilarians were wise and careful, ensuring balance and order. Together, they created plans for shared projects, new energy systems, faster ships, and peaceful colonies beyond both their territories. One evening, as the sun set behind Earth, Leora found herself standing beside Ethan on the observation deck. The sky outside was painted in orange and gold. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Yes," Ethan replied. "It reminds us how small we all are." She looked at him with a thoughtful smile. "When I first met you, I thought humans were small," she said. "Now I see that small things can shine brighter than stars." Ethan turned to her, his calm eyes meeting hers. "We all learn," he said. "That's what makes us human, or maybe that's what makes us all alive." They stood in silence for a while, watching the horizon. The moment felt peaceful, as if the distance between their worlds had finally begun to fade. The next morning, the new peace agreement was signed. Representatives from both sides gathered in the great hall of the station. Cameras from across the galaxy recorded the moment. When Ethan and Leora placed their hands over the glowing seal of unity, a soft light spread through the room. Applause followed, and for the first time humans and Alarians smiled together. Later, when the ceremony ended, Leora walked beside Ethan through the quiet corridors. "I will return to Kareth Prime soon," she said. "There is much to rebuild at home. My people must learn what I have learned." Ethan nodded. "Change takes time," he said. "But it begins with someone willing to listen." She looked at him, her eyes warm. "You taught me that," she said. Without speaking, he smiled gently. "Sometimes that's the best way." As she prepared to leave, Leora felt something new in her heart, a mix of respect and gratitude. She realized that peace was not a victory, but a choice made again and again. Before boarding her ship, she turned back one last time and waved to Ethan. He raised a hand in return, his calm smile the same as before. When the ship rose into the sky, Ethan watched until it disappeared beyond the clouds. He knew the galaxy was changing. The silence that had once divided them had become the bridge that connected two civilizations. And somewhere in the deep, endless stars, the memory of that first insult and that quiet walk away still echoed. But now it was no longer a story of pride and anger. It was the beginning of peace. Years passed since the meeting on the New Geneva research station. The story of how a young alien princess and a silent human diplomat changed the galaxy was told in schools and remembered in both worlds. The peace between Earth and the Alarian Empire grew stronger with time. Together they built new stations, colonies, and cities that floated among the stars. Ships from both species now traveled side by side, carrying scientists, traders, and explorers. The once cold silence between them had become the sound of progress. Princess Leora had changed more than anyone could have imagined. No longer the proud, impatient royal who had mocked others, she had become a wise ambassador known for her calm and understanding. She visited new worlds, spoke to new races, and shared the lesson she had learned from one human's silence. Her people respected her deeply, calling her the voice of peace. She carried herself with grace, always remembering that real strength comes from humility. Ethan Cole continued his work quietly on Earth. He refused fame or reward, even though many considered him the man who changed history. He preferred to stay close to the projects that mattered most, the ones that united humans and Alarians in science and discovery. His calm nature made him a symbol of hope. When others argued or doubted, they often said, "Be like Ethan Cole, speak less, do more." One day, an invitation arrived from Kareth Prime. The Emperor wanted to honor him with the Star of Harmony, the highest award in the Alarian Empire. Ethan agreed to go, not for the award, but to see how far things had come. When his ship arrived, he looked out at the city that had once judged him. Now it looked brighter, more open. The flags of both Earth and Alaria waved together above the great palace. When Ethan stepped into the celestial hall, memories of that first meeting returned. The last time he had stood there, the air had been full of arrogance and laughter. Now it was full of respect. The nobles bowed slightly as he walked past. And at the center, on the throne beside her father, sat Princess Leora. She stood as he approached, her silver gown glowing softly in the light. "Welcome back to Kareth Prime, Mr. Cole," she said with a gentle smile. Her voice was warm and steady. "It has been a long time." Ethan bowed slightly. "It has," he said. "Your world has changed," Leora nodded. "So has yours," she replied. "And so have we." The ceremony began, filled with music that echoed softly through the hall. When it was time, the Emperor himself placed the shining medal on Ethan's chest. "You reminded us," the Emperor said, "that greatness is not born from pride but from patience. The Empire owes you much." Ethan looked around at the crowd, then at Leora. "We owe each other," he said quietly, "because peace is never won by one side alone." After the ceremony, Leora invited Ethan to walk with her through the palace gardens. The air was filled with soft lights from the crystal trees, just as it had been years ago. But this time the silence between them was calm and friendly. "You taught me more than you know," Leora said. "When you walked away that day, I thought you were weak. But now I understand you were strong enough not to fight." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes walking away is harder than staying," he said. "But if it leads to understanding, it's worth it." They stopped beside the reflecting pool. The water glowed faintly, showing the stars above. "Do you ever regret it?" Leora asked. "Leaving that day without saying a word?" He looked at the water for a moment. "No," he said. "If I had argued, we would have both lost. Silence gave space for change. Words might have only built walls. Leora nodded slowly. You're right, she said. And I think that's what peace really is. Not shouting louder, but listening longer. The two stood there for a while, watching the reflections. The night sky above Kareth Prime was full of ships from many worlds now, glowing softly as they crossed between stars. It was a peaceful sight, one that made both of them feel proud and humble at the same time. When Ethan returned to his ship later, Leora watched from the balcony. She felt gratitude but also a quiet sadness. She knew this might be the last time she saw him. But his influence would never fade. His calm strength had shaped her people's future, and she would carry that lesson for the rest of her life. Back aboard his vessel, Ethan looked out at the stars once more. The galaxy was wide and full of mysteries, but he felt content. He knew that somewhere out there, peace was growing like light spreading through darkness. His silence had started something greater than himself. As his ship left the orbit of Kareth Prime, he closed his eyes and smiled. Humanity had proven that true strength was not in shouting or conquering, but in quiet resolve. Across the stars, others had begun to see it too, and so, the story of the young alien royal and the silent human lived on, not as a tale of insult and pride, but as a memory of how understanding can begin with a single quiet step away.